Hello, and welcome to another episode of Friendship, Wellness, and Wisdom. I'm Rachel, and this is.
Heather.
And today we're going to be talking about the many different types and styles of yoga out there, and what that kind of encompasses and entails, how they're similar, how they're different, and what benefits you could get from each type, and knowing what's the appropriate way for you to practice and what's best for you and how to find that out. I think that's the most important part there.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're going to do today, we're going to have a little Q&A. So Heather's going to come on and she's going to tell you about a few different styles of yoga and what they entail, and what some of their similarities and differences are. And then I kind of created a list of questions to delve a little bit deeper into maybe what you want to know before choosing the right yoga
Mm-hmm.
class. So both of us teach, fitness or exercise and well-being in one form or another. And as someone who is not heavily into yoga, I know a little bit about it. I thought I could come up with some really great questions for someone like really looking to know what type of yoga would be best benefit them. So here we go.
So it's super important to acknowledge that yoga is it's a huge subject. I mean, it's huge. It has 5,000 years of history, right? And when we say it has 5,000 years of history, that's like the first knowledge that we have
So,
of the
so that's our
history,
recorded history.
right?
Yeah.
And so for the sake of time, we are focusing on movement aspects of yoga, which are the asanas. So we're not focusing on other things. And then pranayama, which is breathing. And so yoga has 8 limbs to it. And so we're just focusing on limb 3 and 4 in this podcast.
Right.
And so yoga has a ton of different movement styles. People have incorporated yoga with Pilates and all these other great things, tribal dance, and
I'm going to interrupt really quick. I
Mhm.
actually took a course for instructors on yochi, which
Oh yeah,
was like a yoga tai
hmm
chi practice.
yes,
So I actually have like a whole bunch of information and actually like a whole workout to that you could go through combining the two. So, all
that's
right.
awesome. So when I look at yoga, right, I look at the 8 limbs. I practice the 8 limbs of yoga. That is like my compass of life. And that was brought to us by in the Yoga Sutras. Like I said, we're just talking about the movement. So we're talking about Vinyasa flow all the way to yin, to restorative to power. And so we have many different styles, and they are vast, right? To heavy movement all the way to super passive, peaceful movement. And so the key that I want to address first and foremost is I've been practicing yoga for over 30 years. I have over 500 hours of education in yoga, and I am not the yoga teacher for everybody, right? Just because I've practiced for as long as I have, and just because I have 500 hours, does not mean that I am the yoga teacher that is right for you, right? And so, in saying that, it is super important that you speak to the person teaching you yoga before you get into a class. You really want the teacher to know if you have issues,
Mhm.
if you have a heart condition, if you have hypermobility, if you have a knee injury, anything that you have is super important. And it's not just yoga. Anytime you go into
Yes.
a movement practice, you need the person that is teaching you, the person that is guiding you should know any issues or concerns you have. And if they will not address them or work with you on them, then I recommend you find somebody that will.
Yeah, that's not the class for you then. Like if you're
Right.
going in and you're telling someone, "Hey, I had this injury. I'd still like to do your class." Um, can you recommend modifications for me? Like any good
Yes.
instructor should be able to do that
Right.
for you because there are modifications that come in with any style of
Right.
exercise or
And the
movement practice.
right. And the key is and I can only speak for my classes, right? I
Mhm.
can't speak for anybody else. There are some amazing teachers out there that can far excel me. But for me in my class, I tell everybody the the first thing you need to do is breathe. Everything else in this class is extra. If you are taking 1 hour of your time to be on your mat to take care of you, you've already won, right? You've already have made the commitment to do something for you. So that's amazing. So when we look at all these different yoga styles that we're going to be talking about today, I want you to be aware all of them are going to relieve stress. They're going to improve mental focus. They're going to increase awareness, mindfulness. They're going to increase balance and stability. Um, they mental clarity, connection with your inner wisdom, right? The first thing that we are doing when we are starting any movement practice, we're getting to know our body. We assume
Or
certain
at least
things.
we should be. We should
Right,
be.
right. And we assume a lot of things about our body, whether we think we can or whether we think we can't. um, and then the other thing is it detoxifies, it purifies, it empowers, it gives you confidence. So that should be really with a lot of movement practices. They should not stress you out. Even if you are doing a vigorous practice, you should not be so stressed out to go practice any kind of movement. So we're going to start off with Hatha yoga. Hatha yoga is our foundation for all movement practices. And so it's really what the foundation, the structure of yoga is all about. And it's a slow paced movement. It's great for beginners. They kind of follow the asanas in some kind of formatted way, slower moving, so you can get in and out of poses, hold the poses a little bit longer, so you can settle in. And then we move on to Ashtanga. Ashtanga yoga is very dynamic. It's a very dynamic, structured style of yoga, and that's great for a lot of people. Um, Iyengar style yoga is where uh, BKS Iyengar created this style for blocks and straps, and it's for perfect alignment, is really what it
Okay.
is. So, not all of our bodies are the same. And so, if I tell you to get into a position, your arms might not be long enough to reach the floor, or you have to sometimes bring the floor to you, and that's so you use blocks and blankets
Yes.
and
That
things
makes
like that,
sense.
right? Then we move on to Bikram yoga. Bikram yoga, now people call it hot yoga, but
Mhm.
Bikram yoga is 26 poses. It is in a very hot room, 40% humidity. The room is probably about anywhere between 100 to 105 degrees. In hot yoga, they've changed it up. They've put it about 80 to 100 degrees. It's still very humid. Um, Usually your Bikram classes are 90 minutes. In hot yoga, I've been to 45-minute hot yoga classes where they're just kind of getting you in and get you sweating, and then you're on your mat and you're um, moving out. So, but they could be anywhere from 75, 90, 75, 60 minutes, 45 minutes.
Mhm.
You can really settle in and stretch there. Kundalini yoga. Kundalini yoga takes Kundalini energy, a lot of breathing, a lot of breath work, skull shine breathing, a lot of fast paced breathing. And so you're doing this vigorous breathing while moving. Power yoga. Power yoga is inspired by Ashtanga. And so power yoga is like a lot of like handstands and crow and all these advanced great poses to get you really into your
There's a lot of strength built, like a lot of
yes,
strength building
yes,
with your power yoga. Yeah.
yes.
Just kind of like powerlifting, but like with your body.
Right. You're
Yeah.
using your body as your weight. Totally. Aerial yoga. I've tried aerial yoga a couple times and I love it. I
Yeah, that
actually
looks like so much fun. Like I would love to try like a very basic beginner class in that because
yeah.
it just like it looks like it's a blast.
Yeah. I actually bought the equipment and I still have to hang it in my house, but it's getting there. It's getting there. But aerial yoga is exactly what it sounds like. You are hanging from this kind of like hammocky harness type
Like
thing.
silk sheets, like yeah,
Yes,
it's like a
it's
very Cirque du
flowy.
Soleil. It's that
Yeah,
very Cirque du Soleil type of like yoga.
but it's very
Yoga style.
flowy.
Mhm.
And it's the stuff is soft on your skin and things like that. I am personally certified in Vinyasa flow and yin yoga, restorative, booty. And so vinyasa flow is when you flow from one pose into another. It's kind of like one pose leads right into another and it goes for that 60-minute class, right? You're just moving from, you know, your down dog into your, sun salutation
Transition into
into
like a chaturanga, like the
yep,
whole
yep.
everything, like from the
And
floor back up and down again.
yep.
Okay.
And that the cert that I have is Baron Baptiste driven, which if you really want to get into yoga, I suggest some of his books. His books are great. He has one book that I absolutely love. It's called Perfectly Imperfect, and it's a beautiful book. And then there's Yin yoga. I do teach Yin. Yin is I do yin as a cold practice. And so you do it as a cold practice, you get into the joints and things like
Okay.
that. You hold them for a long period of time. Restorative, I also teach restorative. Restorative is I use a lot of props. So wherever you're going in restorative, you're holding the pose for a long time, but you are so propped. Like you have blankets and blocks and bolsters and
So there's a lot
pillows,
of there's a lot of support to kind of
a lot of support. We
get you
support
into that. Yeah.
Yep, we support the joints, we support the back. Everything is supported in restorative, at least in my restorative.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, Booty yoga. I'm also certified in booty yoga. Booty yoga has tribal movement, so you're doing a lot of you get into your pose in your movement, and then you isolate parts of your body, rib cage, belly, hips. So it kind of has, even though it doesn't say that it kind of has like a belly dancer
That's
type
what it's
vibe to
funny
it.
as you described it. That's what it sounded like very
Right.
much to me.
But
So
it's tribal movement. So you're doing a lot of tapping of the body. It's heavy bass music. It's just really
that
getting
sounds like
into
a
it.
lot of fun. Like, yeah,
It
that's something that it would, sounds like it'd be really interesting to
it's a
try.
great practice. It's controversial to some people that are yogis, but I love it. And
Yeah, why not
so,
take that and just have some fun with it? Like, it's
right,
just, what,
exactly.
maybe it's not like the purest form to practice like the exercise part of yoga, but like what a great like it just sounds like a celebration. Like it
Well, and
sounds
it's
like fun.
yeah, it gets rid of your inhibitions. It just kind of lets you just be
Loosen
free
up.
on your mat. Yeah, be free on your mat, and it's beautiful. Chair yoga. Chair yoga is, exactly what it sounds like. You're in a chair and you're doing all these movements. There is advanced chair yoga
Mhm.
that you're out of the chair using the chair for balance and things like
Yes.
that. So,
I've done okay, so I've done both. Like as you guys some of you guys know and I am a personal trainer and I work in a rehab setting. So I have used chair yoga and we've had different like yoga instructors come in and I've helped facilitate like just very basic uh chair yoga practices like
mhm,
throughout my day. And we keep like the movement very simple for varying abilities.
mhm,
And then I've actually, so like during COVID, I tried to find as many like chair yoga videos as I could to use with my clients. And it's funny because just like you said, so there's like where you're sitting in the chair and your
mhm,
movements are simplified in sitting in that one posture to start everything else. And then I've seen plenty where I had to sift through because they get out of the chair, and instead of just using the ground or other props, you use the chair then as your prop, and you're still standing up and getting into a lot of the poses using the
Right.
chair for
Right.
balance.
Right.
So very different like skill levels and
Right.
abilities.
Yeah, totally. Totally. And honestly, all of them are, right? When you look at all the yogas, there's different levels of each one, right? And that's where you talk to your teacher. Kids yoga. Um, I've taught kids yoga, and when we do kids yoga, we do it as a story, right? So you're getting in your boat. So we're doing the boat pose. We're doing lion's breath, where we're lions and things like that. So kid yoga is really fun to help the kids explore their body and get really awareness of their space. The one thing that we don't really acknowledge with kids is as they grow, their body changes, right? And so, just like us, as we get older, our body changes. And so, getting them aware of their body at a super young age is super important so they can be aware throughout
Yeah,
time.
you start to notice those things. And I think it sometimes can be very helpful in knowing how to deal with those changes because you're listening to your body or already,
Right,
and it makes it easier to kind of like adapt and to make changes when you have that kind of awareness. I think that's great. And I'm like, that's one of those things I would love to see instead of, throwing everyone into do like sports and athletics. Like,
right,
I'd love to see like yoga in like a kid's gym class. Like,
right.
not all kids want to play basketball or run
Sure.
track or all of or any of that, and yoga would be like a really great way to kind of include those other kids that are not really inclined to
Yes.
some of the athletics.
Yeah. And then the last one I have on my list, and I'm sure I'm missing a ton because they,
Right.
like I said, 5,000 years. I mean, we got some stuff. Prenatal yoga, right?
Mhm.
Prenatal yoga is great for pregnant women. That's who it's for. But it's great because as your belly grows, right, we now incorporate new things, pillows and blankets and everything to wrap around the belly, and you can still do these poses. The great part of prenatal yoga is it keeps those hips nice and open for birthing. And so and it keeps the stress level of the mom down and things like
Which is, yeah,
that.
which
Helps,
is huge.
yeah, helps with reducing pain in the back
And also the breathing. I mean,
yes.
all that breathing, because like as you go through all these changes in your body,
Yeah.
even just your breathing like has to change
Yes.
as your body changes. Just
Yes. It does. When a baby's pressing on all your organs, you're done. You
Mhm.
got to figure it out.
Yeah, it's really nice to kind of know what positions your body is going to open up more
Mhm.
in and to allow for a better flow of breathing and how to deal with it like when you might be a little, because some shortness of breath can make you anxious, and
Yes.
again, like it comes back to that stress
Yes.
situation.
Right. And
So super
so,
helpful.
so the reality is, we work. All of these classes work through breathing. Some of them have different breathing, like I said, like Kundalini breathing, and the end of Bikram does, a rapid breathing. Booty has different breathing. And so it's getting to know your body. It's the movement with the breath. And so when we look at yoga, now, when people say, I'm going to yoga, you're going to an asana class with pranayama, usually with meditation at the beginning. And so you can get into that peaceful state. Go to you used to go through your limbs, and movement was so you could sit in long meditation, right? And now people do the movement and revert through the mental piece, right? So it's kind of like we do it backwards now.
No, absolutely. But I mean, so it's basically like it is a path to living, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if
Yeah.
you go through all the limbs, it's basically telling you all the things you need to do to take care of yourself in life, like just
Right.
being moral. So how you treat yourself, how you treat others,
Right.
your breathing, your movement, all of this is basic self-care, like
Right.
complete. Like this
Yep.
is a complete self-care
Right.
is basically what
Yeah.
yoga is.
It's holistic self-care, and it complements your life. It is not to replace anything. It is not it's not a religion. It is just a complement to life. That's it.
Yeah.
I
But
know
it's
there's
basically it's almost like a foundation or a format.
Mhm,
It can instruct you, and not that it does, or it says
mhm.
that you have to, but it is a way of like complete, like a wholeness, like what
Yep.
whole, wholeness, wellness, self care.
Right.
All right, so I have lots of questions. So I know a little bit about yoga. I've done some. I've incorporated it into some of my workouts, some of my exercises, but I have never really gotten into the different types and styles of movement practice. So I had a bunch of questions that I thought a lot of other people might have, and I thought it might help us all understand yoga a little bit better and how to choose what class and school or teacher might be best for us. So my first question was, and this is a little in depth, so we may just kind of skim a little bit. So for each of the styles of yoga, I just wanted to know about like concerns, and if certain people may want to avoid different practices or styles.
Yeah. So, like I said in the beginning, yoga is just like any other movement modality. And so, number one, you definitely want to make sure your physician knows that you're trying to find or incorporate a different movement in your life,
Mm-hmm.
right? The ones that I always suggest that people kind of um, work work up to, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily avoid, but just work
But
up
yeah,
to,
work up to makes sense.
would be like the booty yoga, the ashtanga, things that are really the power yoga, things
Mm-hmm.
that you need to like establish your strength and everything like that. Not that you need to avoid them, but you need to work up to them. Um, Things that are kind of for everybody would be like a restorative, right?
Mm-hmm.
Restorative is pretty good for everybody. The only people that I would see not being okay with restorative is people that can't be on the ground.
Right.
People
Okay.
that can't be on the ground should not be in a restorative class because that's where you restore.
Yeah.
And so, but everything else, and chair yoga is pretty much good for everybody, but it's still one of those that you have to make sure that your teacher knows any issues, right?
Yeah, because just because you see chair yoga doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be sitting the whole
Right,
time. And you want to
right,
make sure at that point, like if that's really what you're looking for, you want to make sure that that's what the class is entailing and you're not actually like balancing on the chair and getting
right,
into like maybe like some deeper, lunge poses or like
right.
even like inversion poses if that's what you're trying to stay away from.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's that question. So, all right. Is it common for teachers to mix up yoga styles within certain classes?
Absolutely. So they have a class that's called Vinyan.
Mhm.
So they mix Vinyasa with Yin yoga. I do that sometimes, but I start with Yin and
Mhm.
I go into Vinyasa. They have, like I said in the beginning, yoga lattes.
Right.
Booty is really a mix of a
Right, and that's
bunch of
already a
different
mix.
things. Hit and tribal and all that stuff. And like you were just talking about the Tai Chi yoga.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we it's movement, and so we add a bunch of different movement styles.
So if I see some place like I'm sorry to cut you off.
No,
So
go
like,
ahead.
some places will just say like beginner yoga. Like
Hmm.
and it'll just be that flat. So it's not even giving you a style. It's literally just beginner class. Like
Yes,
and you'll see that a lot of places. Like
yes.
or
So
even beginner one, some
right. And when you look at a beginner class, you should be learning, like, you should be hitting from head to toe, right? You should be learning like your basics, your tabletop, your cat cows, your child's pose, and things like that. So your beginner yoga should take you through those basic movements with the breath, the inhales and the exhales through those movements.
I am hypermobile.
Right.
So that means like I'm in certain areas, like I'm way more flexible in some areas than others. My joints are very laxed, and I will a lot of times, which means I'm going to move past where I should when I'm stretching. So I can, in some areas, stretch a little bit further than I actually should,
Mhm.
which can end up being painful if I go too far and then get back up. So what would be good for me so that I am not doing that during my
Right.
yoga practice?
So the reality is number one, it depends on where you're hypermobile, right?
Mhm.
And so, but again, I'm going to go back to the restorative. The restorative with props that's padding the joints and making sure your tendons aren't lengthening too much and things like that. The thing that people need to understand about hypermobile, and teachers need to understand it as well. Like, this is like such a great question because people think that if you're flexible, you're
Mhm.
good at yoga. But the
Right.
reality is that's not always the case. And I do have a client right now who used to be a contortionist
Yeah.
who suffers greatly from chronic pain because of that, because she was hypermobile and is hypermobile and can contort into different positions.
Right.
And so you have to understand what hypermobility is and hyperflexibility is. Those are
Yeah.
two different things, right? And so you have to understand that one is tendons, one is muscle. Okay. And then the other piece of that is you as a teacher cannot be going and adjusting somebody that is hypermobile, right? You can't go and like if they're
I'm gonna
hypermobile,
get stuck. Like I can
right,
literally get stuck and then end up not
right.
being able
And
to
so
move.
like if somebody in your class is hypermobile and they don't have good alignment, perfect alignment, whatever you want to call it, and you go adjust them, you're doing more harm than good, right? So I think always restorative. Restorative is good. Restorative, if you have a lot of props, that is always the best. And then hatha, hatha, nice and slow. You kind of move at your own pace. You know this wherever you are in yoga, you are the governor of your own body, and you really should govern your movements. If a teacher is directing you to do something, and it is something that you're questioning, you should
Don't
not do it.
Yeah, don't do it.
You can always go and revert back to child's pose, tabletop. I have people that can't go into down dog because it's an inversion and they have a high blood pressure.
Yeah.
So all of their movements comes from tabletop.
Yeah, I get stuck a lot of times. So like if I go to do down dog, I'm hypermobile like within my shoulders and my rib
Mhm,
cage and in my hips. So I can get into down dog. I'm super flexible. I can get
mhm.
into the position, but what happens is stuff starts to slide into just places where it doesn't belong, and then I get stuck, and then I end up having a lot of issues with adjusted, like, and
Right,
to find a position for me where like I'm safe and I'm not overstretching
right. And
in those
so
positions.
not just with hypermobility, but I want to be really specific on this as well. When we are doing yoga, a lot of people think, well, if I'm super flexible, I'm there, right? And that's not always the case. You need the muscles to be working around the joints. You need things to be like structured. And
Mhm,
so, not slumping into a joint, keeping everything engaged and active, not overstretching, not
mhm.
over lengthening, and not taking the body to the extreme. Right? That really should be for everybody. Um, I personally don't agree, or professionally agree with these people that take their body and use pressure to stretch things out. But that's just me. I'm not, like I said, I'm not the teacher for everybody, and I know that, and it's okay. Next question.
Okay, so I just wanted to know what some of the, and I'm sure we kind of covered this a little bit, but what are some of the common aspects throughout the different styles? Like, what are you gonna get throughout as you try all these different things?
So I think the commonality is the breath with movement, right? As we move, we breathe. So as we expand in the front body, we inhale. As we compress, we exhale, and that's just a simpler version of the breathing techniques, but that's the reality of it. The different types of yoga, they emphasize on specific breath techniques throughout the class. So you might not be doing the same breath technique throughout the whole entire class. Like you might be doing fire breath at the end or fire breath in the beginning, and things like that. But the breath work is super important. So in all your classes, you'll have some breath work. Vinyasa, Ashtanga, Bikram, they usually cue the Ujjayi breath, the ocean breath, restorative. They favor slower breath and things like that. We've talked about Kundalini breath, so we won't touch on that again. But yeah, so you're definitely going to get breath, movement, meditation, right? Those are the three things that you're going to get in. That's
pretty much all yoga,
common.
all yoga courses. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. Is there like a recommendation for how often you should practice? And is it different for different styles? So I know, with being a trainer, I might say, okay, you're going to do strengthening 2 to 3 times a week for like so many minutes. And then cardio, you want to do, at least 3 times a week, maybe, up to 5 times a week. And your mobility practice, you can do from 5 to 7 days a week, like even, for gentle stretching, you could gently stretch every single day. So now with yoga, are there the same kind of structured recommendations?
So I practice yoga every day, 7 days a week, sometimes a couple of times a day. But I also practice different types of yoga, right? So I do yin in the morning. Every morning when I get up, I do yin. And so I do a vinyasa flow throughout the day. So I would say vinyasa is one that I see, most people do most. And they do it every day. Like people, it's kind of like their compass, right?
Okay. I wanted to break it down even smaller. Sorry. So to be more structured, like in the questioning. So now you're not doing like a full yoga class as you're doing this several times a day, correct? Like you're maybe doing like a few minutes at a time, or you're doing like you're going to do like a whole class.
My yin in the morning is about 20 minutes.
Okay.
It's about 20 minutes of movement. When you do yin, you're holding poses for, I don't know, 3 to 5 minutes, sometimes longer. It depends on the pose. But your yin class could be legs up the wall. You know what I mean? You could have legs up the wall for 20 minutes, right? But Vinyasa flow has so many different poses. Like when you look at a yoga class, there's over 200 poses. So I can do different poses every day and still be doing a vinyasa flow.
Okay.
Right. So just like you're saying, oh, I'm working shoulders, I'm working arms, I'm working abs, I'm working this. Yoga is no different. With over 200 poses, I can be working on certain parts of the body. Right.
Okay. Yeah. So I was just, it kind of makes sense. I just wanted to make sure, like, with some of these other more like active and engaging forms of yoga, like, so if you're looking at your like booty or your power yoga and things like that, I mean, I would think that you maybe wanted to add something like that in once or twice a week, as opposed to some of your like more simple styles.
Now other people might have different opinions of this. I don't practice power yoga on a regular. I don't practice Ashtanga on a regular. I don't practice Bikram on a regular. I used to practice Bikram every day, twice a day. That was what got me into. That's what got me into being a yoga teacher, because it just kind of changed my life. But the thing is, you have to listen to your body. And hopefully, once you get this practice down, right? Once you get a movement practice down, not necessarily yoga, any movement practice, you get to know your body. You have to listen to your body when your body tells you to rest. You have to listen to your body when your body tells you to move, you know? And sometimes you have to push your body to move when your body tells you on your third day of resting, you don't want to, you know what I mean? You have
Yeah,
to
no.
like get up and move. So you really, the point of all this yoga, the word yoga is to unite, right? It's to yoke, it's to unite. So you are uniting your mind, body, and spirit together so you can govern your body, so you can govern what you're doing. And so it's super important that you listen to that. If you are doing these vigorous yoga styles and your body tells you you're not good with doing, then you need to examine that and look at something else, right?
Okay.
There are days where I have to go and do a vigorous yoga because my body's like, oh my God, I need to really just move that. And I really need to like sweat and things like that. And so your body's going to tell you what you need. You have to listen to it.
That's great. All right. I'm gonna cut off there. I had one more question, but I believe like we kind of covered all of that. So just so we don't go too long, I'm gonna basically sum up a little bit. So you want to talk to someone first before choosing what style of yoga might be right for you. And then when you do choose that, you might want to introduce yourself to the teacher, ask questions,
Mm-hmm.
and bring forth any concerns. You want to listen to your body, and you want to maybe go into your practice like any other physical practice, like knowing that you're going to go in, you're going to see what feels right for you. If something isn't right, you're going to stop, ask questions, and
Yes.
make sure that you're proceeding carefully and cautiously so that you don't get hurt. You want to make known any risks that you might have, or might be concerned with. You want to make sure that you're healthy and able to exercise before starting yoga or any other kinds of
Yes.
exercise practice. Um, and I think I just want to cover that. Like, I just want to put that disclaimer out there. We're both fitness professionals. Um, and we want to make sure that, you're not using this to treat any ailments or whatever. Always see your physician. If there's any concerns or any pains, you want to stop exercising and see a doctor. You just want to make sure that you're taken care of, all together. Anytime you start a new exercise practice, you want to make sure that you're healthy and you are ready to exercise. I want to say thank you for being here. I didn't do it in the beginning of the show, so I'm going to ask you to like and subscribe and to hang in there with us and to please, put something in the comments. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, what you may want to hear from us in the future. And I'm going to say thank you. And then Heather, if you have anything else you
Yes.
want to add.
So thank you for listening. Drop stuff in the comments. And honestly, you could always go to mine or Rachel's websites and ask questions. You can
Yes,
send us
please.
emails, contact us through our website. If you have questions about anything that we're doing, anything that we're talking about, and you're too uncomfortable to put it in the comments, we can possibly do a show addressing some stuff so you can get some clarity.
Yeah,
So
that would be great. So
we,
you can get me at 5 minutes 4 me at gmail.com, or go on to my website, which is the same name, 5 minutes for me.
yep,
You can get Heather at
thebountifulyogi.com, or you can, it's thebountifulyogi@gmail.com.
okay.
So yeah. So thank you for tuning in. We
Yep.
appreciate you.
And we'll see you next time.
All right. Bye-bye.